Now, I think a lot of people have heard of TCP, but oftentimes they think of it as a synonym for Ethernet, right? They often speak of a TCP/IP network. But in reality, it's just one type of connection. TCP transmission acts like a signature required mail. When we send a message using TCP, we get a confirmation that it was received at the destination. UDP transmission is more like first-class mail. We simply put our message on the network and we trust that it gets delivered. Now, when people hear this, they assume that that means UDP is a lesser form of communication, like it's less reliable. But in reality, it's just a different tool for a different job. Let's take a quick look at each. So as we said, TCP gives us confirmation that the packet was received. And that's appropriate when communications are likely to be interrupted, say when you go across the internet. In that case, we have no control over traffic patterns there, and thus we might lose some data. TCP is interesting when a missing packet would invalidate data. For instance, if you're downloading a rather large file and missing a single packet would invalidate the entire download, TCP is a very interesting solution. TCP is also interesting if timely delivery is just a convenience, not a necessity. See, the idea of getting a confirmation is great, but it has side effects of its own. While we get a confirmation that a packet was received, we likely won't get anything if a packet was dropped or lost. So when TCP transmits a packet, it sets a timer. If the confirmation hasn't been received by the time that timer expires, then it transmits it again and resets the timer. Now think about this in a real-time application. For this to be useful, your latency has to be long enough to accept multiple transmission times. And ultimately, you're going to have to decide how many transmissions are going to be allowed. Now, the most likely cause of packet loss is network congestion. So the overhead of the confirmation messages, and even more so, the retransmittals of the content itself, will likely make things worse. So in effect, TCP systems can actually slow down your effective bandwidth. And that's just not going to work for real-time networks like Dante. So let's take a look at UDP. UDP traffic is like first-class mail. We place the envelope in the mailbox and trust that it gets delivered. UDP is appropriate when communications are not likely to be interrupted. Now, this is without controversy on your local area network, where you have total control over traffic flows and who joins the network. But even across the internet, so long as your connection is stable enough and you have enough bandwidth, UDP is still likely to be your best choice for a real-time connection. UDP is appropriate when a missing packet in a sequence can be overcome using error correction. Error correction is a standard part of every digital audio and digital video link. AES-3, MADI, SDI, none of these systems have the ability to verify that data was received at the other side. They simply transmit it across the cable and trust that it's received properly. And it's worth noting that you don't need to guess on your network performance. Dante devices and managed network switches alike can track network performance, showing whether there are any dropped packets. In Dante Controller, you can look in the Latency tab. You'll see this shows statistics for late packets. Frankly, whether it was late or whether it never arrived at all, it'll show up here. Here's a screenshot of a managed network switch with a counter of how many packets were lost. Again, we should expect a count of 0, especially on your local network. Now for a case study, let's look at a festival situation. A stage like this might host 48 bands in the course of 3 days, and usually a stage like this will consist of 2 systems. One of them is running the band that's currently playing, while the other one has the prior band disconnecting and the next band setting up. And then when the band that's currently playing finishes, they just swap over. Even in a situation like this, you should expect no drop packets. Let's see what that setup might include. Of course, your System A and System B would each have 64 inputs coming from the stage for a total of 128. They would link to their own front of house and monitor consoles, so those engineers can pre-dial their show as well. Sometimes there's a console that'll manage the flip for you, as well as provide paths for the MC mic, background music and paging, and things like that. And of course, you've got all the amplifiers for the PA and the monitor system. So all of this is running together on the same network, and again, you can check your stats, you'll find no dropped packets. So UDP is the right tool for real-time networks.